Hello and welcome to That's So Craven, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. This is Dave and this is our post-game review, looking back at yesterday's dramatic 1-1 draw at the Amex. And yeah, looking at the game in detail, looking at some of the questions that have been raised on our Discord afterwards. We've got lots to talk about. And thanks to everyone who's joining us live tonight and has logged in to watch the pod live. And please ask your questions, make your comments throughout the show, and we'll do our best to address them. Joining me again is Marky Mark. And Mark, you were a frustrated figure during the game. Me and you watched it both through illegal means, but I didn't say that. We'll clip that. And but we did watch the game through certain means. And yeah, you're a frustrated figure. So yeah, how are you today?
I think that's my persona on this show. In real life, I'm actually a really happy-go-lucky, chilled-out guy. But just for the purposes of That's So Craven and Fulham's transfers and how we play the game thus far, I'm frustrated. Unrelated, the Discord was definitely not the place where we definitely didn't watch the game. So I encourage people listening, if they're not already on it, to go there, catch up on what little transfer news we do have, and just have some friendly banter with like-minded, charming, lovely fans. But yeah, it was a weird game. It was a bit of a boring game. And hopefully this show is going to be interesting throughout, not just in the final 30 seconds.
Well, yeah, exactly. And Mike, you were at the game yesterday. we're going to go through it in detail, but can you just give us a flavour for what it was like in that 96th minute when Muniz bagged that winner, equaliser?
Felt like a winner. Yeah, you're not wrong. Yes, I was there through legal means, just to clarify for the purposes of the pod. But yeah, obviously brilliant to essentially nick an equaliser, which on the balance of the game, a draw was probably fair, mainly because it was a terrible quality match, which surprised me for two sides who are usually good footballing teams. I just thought it was a very typical first game of the season where neither side looked at their best, and hopefully there's more to come. But yeah, great scenes in the away end, of course, and it was great watching Muniz run away from. So we were like right behind the goal from where I was, and he was running off that side, and it was like, no, you've gone past the Fulham fans now, Rodrigo. That's the Brighton fans. I think you're in the wrong bit, mate. But it was still great. So loved the enthusiasm of the celebration, and yeah, of course, it was brilliant to get such a late goal in dramatic fashion like that.
Now, Mike, your dad texted our WhatsApp group and said that because you went with both of your parents, I think, because they have friends down there, and he mentioned your mum nearly got arrested for jumping on a steward. Now, can you talk us through that?
No, that was a complete fabrication. My dad was talking bollocks, basically. Okay. So that didn't happen.
I thought there was a great story there that we can.
Yeah, no, I hope my dad is listening to or watching this so that I can completely categorically state that he is talking bollocks, not for the first time in his life.
Okay, awesome. Right, so let's get stuck into this game. So I think we both mentioned it wasn't the greatest match. I remember saying before, we all kind of said, it could be a bit of a scrappy game. First games of the season always a bit nervy. No one's got any momentum, and that's why I was kind of confident we could get a draw. But obviously, it looked for a long time like we wouldn't. We'll start with the first half. And actually, we'll start with the team. Was there any surprises in that team? And I think the only thing that we'd considered pre-game was who was going to kind of fill in at left back, because we all expected the team that started against Frankfurt to be the starting team here. And there was options. We could have seen Cess come back from injury. Of course, he didn't make it. We could have seen Cuenca potentially play there. In the end, Cuenca came into the middle and Bassi played left. What do we make of that, guys? Mark, I'll go with you first.
I'll jump in. Yeah. I'm really happy that Cuenca's getting a chance because I think he's a quality player. I think perhaps he's been a professional about it, but perhaps there was some frustration eking in. But when you have the player of the season, Bassi, in front of you, it's really difficult, right? So I don't think Marco is sentimental enough to sort of play a player just to appease them. But he knows the quality is there, and maybe he just made the trade-off in his head that the team's still going to be strong. Bassi can play in that position. We have Castaña's backup. He came on really late in the match. But it was good to see Cuenca. I'm rooting for that guy. And I think he had two real trials by fire last season, where when he started, it was Liverpool one match, and then it was Man City the other. So, yeah, we let in a couple of goals those games, but that's against the best of the best in the league. And he didn't look out of place. He didn't look scared. So I'm pretty happy with that lineup. I would love to have Robbo back. Absolutely. And then that gives Marco the headache, right? Of probably he's going to go with Bassi. But when Bassi's at AFCON, we have a really, really solid, mature and calm deputy in Cuenca. So very happy with the lineup, given the circumstances we're in.
Yeah, Mike, what did you make of it? I mean, it was obviously Bassi's played left back before. I think he played there for Rangers, if I'm right, and did quite well. How did you make of it? What did you make?
Yeah, and Nigeria tend to play with a 3 at times, and he's the left of that 3, so it's probably a more natural move for him. Also, as well, I think the fact that Brighton don't have a really big physical striker. If it had been, if they'd have still had Evan Ferguson, for example, I think it might have been the other way round. But Bassi at left back for me was fine. I felt that his athleticism up against Minte helped nullify that threat a bit more. There was a couple of times where Minte sort of would knock it past him and try to use his pace, but Bassi gets his body in front nicely and just shepherds it out. And so I felt comfortable with that. As I said on Friday's show, I would have been worried if it was Sessegnon. I think he would have had a really hard time defensively against someone of Minte's quality. So no problems in that regard. I think that Cuenca acquitted himself quite well. It wasn't like that they were particularly targeting him, for example. And we've seen his quality before. It's just, as Mark alluded to, he's got that kind of problem where the player of the year was in front of him. So he's just had to bide his time. But this could be a good opportunity for him to put down that marker, for when Bassi's away.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about the first half then. I think almost because the second half was so dull, that you forget about some of the passages of play Fulham created in the first half, where I thought we started the game quite well. We were the team that were kind of pushing, which I didn't expect, actually. And our build-up play was pretty good. It was just kind of same old story for me, like based on last season, where good build-up play, good at getting it forward into the kind of wide areas, and then kind of really struggling to kind of create any real chances. The only real chance we created, if I can recall, was a chipped ball into the box by Iwobi, and Wilson at the back post with a bit of a crap header, really. He looked really disappointed. Should he have done better, Mark?
Yeah, I think he probably was expecting interception. So that's why you should always anticipate, right? And I think this leads on nicely to a point I wanted to make, where we're jumping a little bit ahead. But that spilled shot from Leno, right? Which thankfully it didn't turn into something embarrassing, and he saved it, and that's all good. But my point is anticipation. And when he spilled that shot, look at where the Brighton strikers are. They're right on him, right? He has about half a second to grab the ball, which he collects, and it's all good. But our defenders are nowhere near that position. What I'm saying is, I wish that Wilson, he should have done better with the header. Maybe he was put off, but he should have anticipated that the ball was going to come through anyway. And I think on another day, maybe when he's fully focused, or when he doesn't pause for whatever reason, I think he has a really good chance of scoring that, because that was a well worked move. Just it didn't play off that time, and a bit unusual from Harry, but maybe first match of the season, some nerves, he wasn't ready. But yeah, hopefully we put that away in another match.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, Josh King, I mean, if there was a positive from that first half, surely it was him. Just at the heart of everything good we were doing, bringing the ball forward, knocking it about. He did have kind of, what's the Brighton midfield that it's linked with United? What's his name again? Baleba. He did have kind of a tough kind of adversary in Baleba, who was kind of treating him, he was throwing in some challenges. But generally, I was really impressed. What did you make of his performance?
Yeah, same. I thought it was a really brave performance from, you know, a young player who was his second start in the Premier League. I think you could see from the off, we started well, and he was central to a lot of that, because when he picks the ball up in those central areas, he would have somebody like Baleba breathing down his neck. He's not afraid of that physical battle. He got kicked a fair few times and kept on, you know, getting up and driving forward. He's much more dynamic than the players that we've been used to seeing in those positions, in that he wants to turn, get on the ball and play forward and be direct in terms of carrying it, but with pace as well. So I think that was a big, attributing factor to the way that we started the game. I know that we'll sort of touch on King's particular performance later in the game, but I think that was really the catalyst for how well we started. And it was nice to see that we wanted to be on the front foot from the off, even though we know that Brighton are the kind of team that, you know, can dominate possession and make life difficult for you. So, yeah, really pleasing to just sort of see that. But again, it was, as you say, it was very similar in that nice patterns of play. And then we get into the final third and it kind of breaks down, maybe because we don't have enough players that will gamble on things. I think there was multiple times we've seen, not just yesterday, but over the course of last season as well, where sometimes the player's out on one side and you look over to the other side and you see the winger on that side isn't making that run into the box. They're still out on the other wing. And that's something that frustrates me. I feel like we need to gamble a bit more in terms of getting numbers in the box if we're going to make real chances. Otherwise, you see, you know, it's Raul and there's like 4 or 5 defenders. You know, we're not going to come out on top in those situations.
Yeah, no, good points. And King was kind of at the heart of one of 3 penalty appeals Fulham had and the one in the first half is where he'd kind of taken a touch that was a bit overhit, but managed to catch up with the ball and play it inside. Defender does make contact with him, but doesn't make like strong contact. King's kind of a small guy. Steve Reynolds just mentioned in the group there that Josh needs just about a stone to beef up. And he looks like a young kid on the pitch, just a young kid with so much talent. But did anyone think that should have been a penalty, or does everyone think there was contact, but perhaps a bit soft? Mark, what did you think?
I don't remember all 3 instances off the top of my head, but I do think in terms of like the law of averages, one of them should have been given. I think maybe it's the second one where the Brighton player catches the back of King's foot and misses the ball, and it feels light, right? And in terms of is that a pen or not, I would hate for that to be given against me, and I don't think it's in the spirit of the game. But we're not talking about the spirit of the game, right? We're talking about the rules, and the rules are if you miss the ball and you kick the player in the box, that's a foul and that's a penalty. So I would have liked for one to be given. I kind of see why it wasn't, because it wasn't Stonewall, and perhaps we can talk about ours at another time. But yeah, I mean, I think King, he acquitted himself well. I didn't think he dove, and he's a quality player. I'm really excited to see what comes from him next. But I would have expected one of the 3, in short, to have been given to us.
Yeah, Mike, you're right down the other end from this, so it'd be a bit unfair to ask your opinion unless you've got one. But I was interested when you mentioned Raul when you were talking before. I didn't think he had much impact on the game yesterday. It felt like the 2 centre-backs kind of had his number. He looked quite, deep, which he tends to do in the first half when he's not getting the ball, because every time he was closer to the centre-backs, they were just physically stronger. And yeah, he was quite quiet, particularly in that first half. What did you make of him?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think he had one of his quieter games where his link play wasn't quite as smooth as it normally is, and when he's not being able to do that so much, it kind of nullifies what he can do, because he's not someone who's going to run away from the centre backs. We can't sort of just stick one around the corner or in behind for him to try and chase. So yeah, quiet performance, but we know that he's got quality, and there'll be games where he'll be decisive for us. So that's sometimes the issue with having sort of 2 very similar level strikers, even though their attributes are different. It's when it's not working for one, the obvious answer is to say, we should have started the other ones. But so I think, Silva, as we talked about before, likes to sort of go with the guy that's got the shirt and it's his to lose. Whether or not that's going to be the case for the next game, I don't know. I don't think any of us can know. We can only really guess. But yeah, one of Raul's quieter games, but there'll be other moments in the season that he'll be useful for us.
And it wasn't just Raul. There was some criticism I saw on X around Iwobi's performance and also Harry Wilson's performance too. Both struggled to kind of impact the game. Thoughts on that, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, there's one breakaway during the game where I think the ball's been lobbed massively across the pitch, and Iwobi's sort of first to it, but he loses the header, and then Brighton do a really strong counter-attack from that point. And I don't know if it's because I follow the Fulham players quite a bit on social media, and Iwobi clearly has this thing where he's trying to build up his social media presence and talk about life as a footballer and his music career. And I just think the optics aren't great. That isn't to say he doesn't give 100% on the pitch, but when people see, because sometimes he can be a bit of a languid player, and we know the skill is there, and we know he's a good footballer, but I don't know. I'd like him, perhaps not entirely related, but I'd like him to look like he's focusing more on the football, and I think he is one of the favorites, I'd argue. Maybe not as much of a favorite as AP, which is a whole entirely different conversation, but I think he's one of the first names on the team sheet because he brings that quality. But yesterday just wasn't the game for him, I felt. Yeah,
but defensively though, I think Brighton did come into the game towards the end of the first half. There was a period where they had they were putting us under a bit of pressure and had a few corners. I was a little bit nervous at the time, but the majority of the game, I think we defended pretty well. And in particular, I thought Kenny Tete and Joachim Andersen, Mike, were standouts. Cuenca, by all means too, didn't have a bad game at all, but I just wanted to highlight those two. I thought were quite impressive. Did you share that view?
Yeah, I agree. I thought Tete was really good, particularly up against Matoma, who we know is a really tricky, handful of a player. One lovely bit of skill that Tete did in the first half. I don't know if you guys will recall when he sort of flicked it over Matoma's head, and then was a bit unfortunate that the pass that he tried to play through for Wilson. I think maybe Wilson had been caught offside or something, but just a lovely bit of play, and it's good to see Tete sort of straight back into the swing of things. But yeah, generally I think it was one of those games where just not a lot happened. So the defenses on both sides were generally on top. It was a real sort of game that lacked quality. I know Mark touched on Iwobi, but I think you could look at every player on the pitch at one point, pass the ball off, literally just off the pitch. I don't think I've ever seen that happen as many times as I did in the game yesterday, where they just weren't in sync with each other. It just felt a bit stodgy at times, where players were getting the ball stuck under their feet. Don't know if that's a combination of being first game, maybe not quite as sharp as they would need to be. It was sort of kind of humid, so it might have been sort of a drier, stickier pitch than normal. But yeah, just generally, it was definitely a day where the defenses kind of got the better of things because just that sort of real cutting edge and lack of quality.
Yeah, just to jump on Mike's point real quick, though, I do feel like Brighton, it was a fairly even match, but I do feel like the Brighton players were hungrier. I don't know if you guys think the same, but they were moving for interceptions. They just seemed a little bit faster and a little bit hungrier. And, I'd love to see that from our players. I'd love to see King does it sometimes. He fights for balls and things like that. But I want the entire midfield to be doing that and our defenders to be doing that all the time. Yes, we have the odd interception and so on, but I don't know. The Brighton players, just from what I could see, were really, and they were moving the ball fast as well, whereas we seem to, I don't know, employ some sort of tactic where we need to get the ball, then look up, then decide who we're going to pass it to, and then it just seems slower. And so I'm giving credit to Brighton here because they're probably one of the teams I'll complain about the least. I think they play the right way. I think their recruiting is great as well, but while we were evenly matched, they felt 5 to 10% faster than us. Do you guys think the same, or am I completely talking bollocks here?
Yeah, I mean, I thought I wasn't overly impressed with Brighton, but then again, you have to caveat that with the fact that it is the first game, and as I said, no one's got any momentum. No one's, it was a very kind of edgy game, and there's a lot of fouls going in. That's something we didn't mention about the first half. In that, it really annoyed me that despite the fact that, I think I remember 3 or 4 pretty strong challenges for some Brighton players on Fulham players, and the ref let them go, which is fine, but you've got to be consistent. And then he pulls Bassey up for something on the halfway line. It just felt silly, and I just thought, where's the consistency there? It was really frustrating, and I don't think he had a brilliant game. And slightly, I think Brighton got the better end of decisions, in my opinion. And actually, that brings me on to like the second half, and the first kind of talking point was, we thought we had a penalty appeal when Bassey went down. I think that was before their penalty. I might have got that wrong, but Bassey seemed to claim for it. They'd said it was a shoulder barge, shoulder to shoulder. Mike, you were quite close to that, presumably, because you described where you were sitting, and it sounded like you were pretty much in line with that. What was your view when that happened?
Yeah, so I always try and look at penalty shouts as, if that's the other way around, how would I feel if that's given against us? I think if that's given against us, I'd be furious, because that would have felt soft. I felt Bassey probably was almost looking for it a bit and could have stayed on his feet and tried to cut the ball back. I do have one grievance with it, however. About 2 minutes before, Brighton were knocking it about the back. They play it back to their goalkeeper, and Raul's closing it down, and Van Hecke just sort of stands in front, and as soon as Raul bumps into him, falls over like a sack of potatoes. And I said to my dad, if that's the other way round, that never gets given. Of course, the referee had blown for that for a free kick. So, of course, when the same thing happens and Bassey gets bumped by Belaber and goes over like a sack of potatoes, it's no foul. So your point about consistency with referees, I'm trying to get to the point where I'm just like, I can't ask for consistency because I'll never get it. So stop worrying about it. But it just felt very frustrating at the time, where we just had a very soft free kick given against us. I think that might have been after Brighton's penalty. So that might have led to a bit more
I see.
agitation in our end as well, because obviously we're at the other end of the ground, so you can't quite see, but it looked like one of those ones at the time that was a bit softer. On reflection, their penalty probably was okay, but yeah, I with the Bassey one in particular, I think it was probably not enough to be given a penalty, but only because the other way around you'd be furious. So,
Mark, on their penalty, then let's talk about that. For me, Berger, he's chased a player into the box and got way too close to him. I think if you're going to try and break things up, you've got to do it before you get it to the box. It was just silly to even get involved in that when you're running at a player from behind. And I don't think it was his best afternoon either. He got hauled off shortly after, and I don't think it was just based on that alone. Your view on that incident, I guess, and Berger's performance as well.
I'm still going to maintain that I think he's going to have a good season. I hope Marco unshackles him, because we've seen him score belters against us, so we know that he has that in his locker. Also, the lad knows how to take a brilliant penalty, so I think he's key for us. You're right in that if he's going to do a tactical foul, it should be outside the box. I don't want to come down on him too hard, because it's one mistake. In general, I think he's a quality player. He shouldn't be doing, from behind the player through their legs trying to get the ball. That's just not gonna. The optics of it are horrible, right? So not a great decision there. But yeah, I'd say pretty stonewall. I would didn't really complain. Of course, it's Matt O'Reilly who we let leave on a free and make some other club a ton of transfer money to take it and score. And just because I am a deeply cynical, slightly catty dude, I listened to the Brighton post-match, right? And O'Reilly's speaking. And he takes a slight dig at us, or you guys can listen to it on YouTube as well. You can tell me whether I'm being overly sensitive and a snowflake or whatever. But he goes, yeah, it's the Premier League. You get punished if you don't take your chances, and all teams are strong in their own way. And I was like, what does in their own way mean? Does that mean like we're generally crap and just get lucky? Or I don't understand why all teams are strong bracket in their own way needed to come out. But he says that. And I was like, whatever, you still haven't beaten us. So there's that. But he takes the pen. Leno guesses right, but it's a good pen, and he's a good player. So there you go, another one to thank Scotty Parker for. But yeah, it was a good pen, no complaints, Stonewall. And don't worry, we're gonna have the same situation happen with our striker, with Raul, but it'll be against top 6 side, so it'll get waved away, and VAR will be grabbing tea or something during that time. So it's good. We can come back to that then.
It's back on consistency. Mike, so let's talk about the other penalty, the third one. And I noticed that Wayne Rooney, I know he's been stealing a living since he retired, but he's now on the match of the day panel somehow. But he actually thought the third one was a penalty on King, where King stretched for the ball, got a touch on it, and the Brighton player does hit him from behind. King then goes over, and I think it goes back to the point Steve made about him being quite lightweight. It's almost like any kind of touch is going to knock King over, and I wonder if the ref kind of felt, there just wasn't enough in it, and VAR felt maybe there just wasn't quite enough in it. It was one of those where I think if the ref had given it, VAR wouldn't overturn it. But what was your view on that one?
Yeah, I agree with what you just said there. I think it's exactly that. If the ref gives it, it doesn't get overturned. I thought it was a foul. It gets given outside the box. We just know that referees and VAR aren't quite in sync, where they all sort of make a non-decision, as in they think that the other will bail them out. So it's that kind of thing where the ref thinks, oh, well, if it's a real penalty, I'll get bailed out by the VAR. And the VAR's like, well, the ref didn't give it, so we won't intervene. It was one of those kind of ones. If I'm honest, I couldn't tell at the time. It's only seeing it back that I think, yeah, that's a foul. So again, like, there was a lot of decisions that none of them are like absolute howlers that didn't go against us, but there's a culmination of things that you think that, on the percentages of it, we should have got something, but it's a tough job. I'm not a referee's apologist by any means, but I don't think any of them sort of can count as, oh, he's had a howler there, or he's gone for he's home decisions kind of thing. It was just those kind of sort of ones where when you're trying to make a decision in a split moment, it kind of erred more towards I don't think there's enough there, rather than it not being an actual foul.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Okay, so then there was some subs. First ones, I believe, were Kearney and Muniz came
and
on.
Traore. It was all
and
three.
Traore, apologies.
And it was early for Silva. It was about 60 odd. So 65, 66, something like that.
Yeah, it was.
That's early for Silva.
Yeah. We'll come to Rodrigo, but the other two, Mark, what was your thoughts on Tom Kearney's cameo, and also Adama? Did you think he offered more from the right than Wilson did?
So first, let's give credit to Marco for the theory. The theory was we need to change it up. The theory was I have a calm, excellent playmaker and distributor of the ball, and I have an absolute weapon in Traore, who's a battering ram, can burn down the side and then cross it in. So the plan sounds good, but the execution just wasn't there. But I want to give credit to Marco for the early for him, like Mike said. But that's good. We need to do more of that instead of waiting until the 75th minute and then you don't have enough time for the subs to get into the game. It didn't seem like it worked. And as much as I love TC and he's a legend, and there will be a time and place where TC will come up trumps, just like Brentford last season. But I don't think he should be our first sub. I think we should, hopefully that gets sort of changed in the transfer window and we bring in someone of higher caliber, well-rounded, right? So obviously TC has high caliber in other parts, but it didn't really work for me. And I mean, it took until the dying embers of the game for something to change. We'll come to that when we get to it, but yeah, right idea, poor execution.
So then there was the sub where ESR comes on for King, which I was like, no, come on for Wilson. But yeah, he made the like for like swap. Mike, ESR, I think we've had a note in the comments saying he's still looking a little heavy. I think he's a bit heavy set, generally just his natural build. But yeah, I mean, there was some criticism of him looking a bit sluggish. However, I do think, he obviously creates the chance that leads to the corner, just with a quick, he kind of broke forward with the ball, turns a player and gets a shot away, deflected wide, and that leads to the corner for the goal. Just thoughts on his little cameo there, and, which led to that corner.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of him coming on for King, I think moments before that happened, King did sort of like a run into the box, and then it didn't amount to anything. But then we could see that he was sort of stretching his calf, as in he was probably feeling a bit of cramp. And even though he'd played really well, it was probably, the tank was empty.
Okay.
Smith Rowe, when he came on, didn't do anything when it was the like-for-like replacement. It was only when they kind of shuffled things around and Traore went to the right side, Smith Rowe went to the left side, and Wilson came through the middle, that Smith Rowe started to get on the ball a bit more and started to have a bit of an impact just in terms of actually, getting the ball and trying to make things happen. But really, we didn't really play with enough urgency until it got into stoppage time, where we were actually thinking, oh, we're going to run out of time here. We need to actually up our game a bit. So it wasn't just him, it was a general overall sort of sluggishness I felt from the team in it going into the later stages when we're chasing it. Part of that as well is due to, Brighton, very high intensity team, and they were pressing us really well. Going back to sort of Mark's point on Tom Kearney, I think the idea was to get a more progressive passer into the midfield to kind of punch the ball forward a bit more with, a bit more pace and intent, but it just didn't work for us. So it was actually nice to see Smith Rowe kind of drive forward towards the end and actually have a shot, because I don't think we'd had one.
We hadn't had a shot on target.
So yeah, that's what. So it was one of those ones where it's just like, we might need to actually do something here. I think before that we'd had that cross into the box where Tete sort of skied it, but it would have been given as a foul anyway, so it wouldn't have counted. I think Muniz had pushed Dunk or something like that. So it was, it was our first real shot in anger in the second half, the Smith Rowe one that led to the corner.
Yeah, no, true. And Mark, let's talk about Rodrigo. So he's chomping at the bit to come on, but he's had a hell of a week. There's been so much speculation linking him with that move. There was a bit of kind of questions about whether he'd be in the squad. But then as Friday came around, Silva kind of confirmed that he would be. We saw pictures of him on the coach and things like that. So we knew he was going to be involved. When he came on, and before we talk about the goal, do you think he, started to offer a bit more up there than Raul was offering beforehand?
Maybe. I didn't really notice it. I think Raul, he definitely had a quiet game. I just noticed that when Muniz was making those runs, maybe this is just canny defending from Duncan Van Heck, but Muniz kept landing on the floor. I don't know if you guys caught that as well, or at least for one free kick or another corner or something like that. But he was really being manhandled. I think at one point he kind of is sat down and throws his arms up in frustration at the referee who's not giving anything. But he got Muniz got his moment of glory towards the end of the match. What worries me, sort of jumping ahead behind, again, social media comments, when Marco was talking about, as the post-match comments, Marco was talking about Muniz and how he's been. He calls him a professional. And I really don't like that word. Not that we don't want Muniz to be a professional, but it feels like Marco uses that language when he's talking about a player doing a good job in a tough situation and they possibly want to leave. I believe he called João Palhinha a professional as well. So, hopefully we keep him. I think it seems like the latest news coming out is that we will keep him. And it just, the reception he receives from the fans and him holding up the scarf and that amazing moment, Fulham picks that go hard. I think at the very least, this will mean our leadership and management is going to really demand the top price for him. Perhaps before this match, they're willing to flex, and now they have the ammunition to say, hey, we brought Muniz on. He still has 2 years. He just scored a goal as a sub. You're going to pay 50 million euros. So hopefully he stays. We can touch on the goal a little bit more, but yeah, a real key piece of our team.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, you obviously behind the goal there. I bet you probably thought oh, Fulham have got a corner, that's not going to amount to much. It was, however, the first time we took an in-swinging corner. A shout out to Barton in the group. He was pulling his hair out about the fact that all our corners were out-swingers all day. Wilson's put in a fantastic delivery there. Can you just talk us through that from your perspective behind the goal? But, just give us what it was like to be there.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so I think I'm assuming that we haven't got this new set piece coach in yet, because I'd imagine that it'd be more sophisticated than get it in the mixer if that was the case. But that's exactly kind of what happened with Wilson's delivery. It was, one of those ones where it was like, let's just pile everybody in the box and hope something comes of it. I think what was good was that Muniz sort of hung out rather than trying to get too involved. And it's something that, the likes of Harry Kane would do. He kind of peels off towards the back post to kind of gobble up any seconds. And what was lovely about the goal is that it's that cushion touch on his knee, much like the Liverpool goal at the back end of last season. It's the composure, and he just finds the bottom corner. He's not slashed at it and skied it, which could have happened, 12, 18 months ago. It was just a nice composed finish right in, a bit of a chaotic scene. And then, of course, wild celebrations. But you could sort of see that they were a bit reserved from Muniz himself. He's obviously not a happy boy for one reason or another. I don't think it's, even if he does leave, it's not because he doesn't love the team and the fans and the club. I think it's just that he's unhappy with his situation in that he's probably an ambitious boy. He wants to play Champions League football. He wants to try and get in that Brazil squad for the World Cup. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't like where he is. It's just that opportunities elsewhere for him might present, better, both financially and professionally. So, fair play to him. He's always somebody that's up for it. His enthusiasm and his energy is, infectious. And I think that helped kind of drive the team forward, particularly into that stoppage time period where we are chasing it and we need something to happen. But sometimes, you need those cooler heads to prevail as well. And that's exactly what he did in the right moment. So, yeah, lovely finish. Wild scenes in the away end, of course, which is brilliant. And loved the fact that he got hold of the scarf. I don't know whose scarf that was. I hope they got it back. But yeah, brilliant to see, and really pleased for Muniz himself, because he's obviously not had the easiest of times in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and Mark's right. There's mixed reports coming out today. There's reports that Atalanta want a quick decision. I've read by Tuesday, or they're going to move on to other targets. But the prices Fulham are asking is really high, and I think it should be high. Because it's really late in the window. And okay, you could look at it and go 50 million euros for a player that's started 8 times last year is a good return. But with that, we talked about this in the last pod, with the 25% sell-on fee that Flamingo have, we're not going to recoup enough to be able to go again and find a replacement if we don't get top dollar for Muniz. So I don't think this one's over. I agree with Mark that the Silva's post-match comments, I interpreted that there's still, maybe there is something going on, but certainly Muniz was a professional on the pitch, and it was an excellent finish to that goal. I thought really kind of composed finish in a difficult moment, and he's done that many times now. I guess the big question is now, will he still be here next week, and will he start, I suppose? But we'll let the After Dark crew talk about that one. I guess in better transfer news, Mark, it seems that Kevin's agent's flying over on Monday and having a meeting on Tuesday for the club to try and unlock that. We talked about in the last pod. There's, Fabrizio Romano keeps posting this. He must have a hand in with the agent on this one, but it feels like it's moving a bit closer, which is exciting, right?
Yeah, the agent's coming here. Apparently, they're dropping their ask from 50 million euros to 45 million euros. Just like Tesco always says, every little helps. So that's good. What I don't want this to be, and sorry to keep sounding overly bloody negative, I really don't want this to be a Kluivert 2.0. Because Kluivert last season, 12 goals, 6 assists, and he was meant to be a Fulham player. We got Willian instead, and season 1 Willian was great, so that's fine. But we need to get this done. I'm on the Kevin hype train. I've seen one YouTube video of all his best bits, and now I am convinced he is the answer until we get linked with another exciting winger who will also be the answer. But I want it to happen. I really want Kevin to happen. I'm gonna sound like a top 6 fan here, but we're just one player away, or 1 or 2 players away from being great. But the thing is, I genuinely believe that. I genuinely believe we're 1 goal-scoring, aggressive, talented, pacey winger and 1 battle-hardened, box-to-box, tough, aggressive 8 away from, okay, maybe not greatness, but being a really strong contender for Europe. So I really hope we get minimum 2 in, hopefully 3 or 4.
Completely agree. And I just want to talk about a point that Black, White and Fred made in the group that was regarding Marco Silva's comments. He also mentioned that he'd quite like to find a way of getting ESR and King into the team at the same time, which was quite an interesting point. And what does that mean? Does that mean ESR features on the left, or does Silva try and, you know, maybe move King into the 8 and play ESR ahead of him? Mike, how does Silva make that work?
I think it might depend on the opposition. You know, I think, you know, we saw ESR play off the left a little bit yesterday. He did that for Arsenal, and that might be a more natural fit when we've got Robinson back in the side, because we'll have a more, you know, overlapping fullback, which means that Smith Rowe can cut in and then maybe link with the midfield from there as well. So that is an option. I wouldn't be trying to sort of squeeze them all in if it doesn't feel like it's going to work just for the sake of doing it. There's potentially an option to trial it in, you know, the upcoming League Cup game. I don't know whether he would do that or not, but that might be a possibility. It's something that I'm not necessarily against, because I think it might be, particularly when Iwobi's missing through the winter when he's at AFCON, that we might need to utilise that as an option as well. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think he would break up the Lukic-Berger partnership to accommodate King and Smith Rowe both centrally, unless we're playing somebody who we feel that we can completely dominate the midfield without that added need for sort of more robust protection.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, well, before we close out Brighton, I just wanted to get your view. I saw Josh King got the man of the match, the official man of the match. Is there anyone else you want to highlight, Mark, that you were impressed with? It wasn't obviously a classic game, but did anyone stand out? Do you have any kind of alternative opinions to that?
Oh, I'm gonna be boring and say I'm gonna give it to King. Like, the kid is 18 years old, and yeah, I'm sure they cherry picked the stats, but he was first for a lot of the stats, at least for Fulham. I'm really so glad we got him on a long-term deal. I think everyone, at least the back line, they did well. Yes, there was a couple of slip-ups, and maybe we get punished against a really, really good top 4 side with those slip-ups. But yeah, I think King's come good, and I'm really happy about that. So I'm more than happy with him being man of the match.
Same question to you, Mike.
Very short answer, no. He was head and shoulders the best player on the pitch for us. So I can't offer anything more than that, I'm afraid.
No, I agree. I thought he deserves the man of the match. Little shout out to Kenny Tete as well, though. I thought he had a low-key brilliant game. And maybe not quite in the spotlight like King was, but yeah, I was really impressed with him on the day. So Mark, can you run us through some of the questions that we've received today on our Discord group, so we can try and go through those and answer them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got it open now. It's in the thread titled Podcast Questions, as you'd expect. First one is from our very own Jack at CravenPod. He asks, would you start Castagna at left back against Man United and bring Bassi central again, assuming Cess and Jedi aren't fit?
Mike?
I'd probably stick with what we did on Saturday. I feel like watching the Man United game earlier this afternoon that their most outstanding player was Mbeumo. They would probably... I would feel more secure with Bassi up against him in that wide position, and then Cuenca in the middle. I mean, so they played Cunha through the middle, and he's a handful as well, as we've seen in the past. But yeah, I don't feel any need to necessarily change it. I know Bassi at times looked a little bit uncomfortable in possession, but defensively, I thought he was fine. So yeah, I wouldn't see any need to change that necessarily.
Yeah, I agree. Is there a second part to Jack's question there?
He does have another one. Just what my final comments on that as well. There was a really good video I saw on YouTube about how Bassi is sometimes used in an attacking sense as well. We've seen that last season where he drives forward. So maybe that's something that it's not a exact like for like comparison, but we like that Marco. We know that Marco likes to attack from his left-hand side, and if Bassi can be relied on to carry the ball forward, which Steve Reynolds did point out earlier that he got caught out a few times trying to track back, but perhaps that's part of the thought process as well, whereas Cuenca maybe doesn't play that way or hasn't been utilized in that way since. So I agree with Mike that we're probably gonna keep the same lineup. The second part to Jack's question was we talked about it a little bit, but should Muniz be back in to start after his goal, and does his celebration put an end to the speculation?
Well, I think you'd have to say on yesterday's performance from both players that I think Muniz would be more of a handful for the Man United defence, and I think you should play the player who's scoring goals. So I would, if you assuming he's still here, I would start him. I don't think it puts an end to speculation. I think we might get an answer one way or the other this week, please God. And hopefully it's I'd want him to stay. I just think it's too late to be messing around for any kind of money, that we might be able to get for Muniz. It's too late now, and we haven't prepared for this. So, I don't think Alanta will go away, and I think Muniz's head has been turned by that. But I hope that he does look like the professional that Marco said he is. We didn't see a 50% effort. We got a full effort and a fantastic equaliser. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, the speculation will never end. Even when the transfer window shuts, there's always speculation about players. We'll know that he's, technically in the last year of his contract, but we've got the option. But realistically, unless we offer the guy better terms, he's going to want away sooner rather than later, because we're just not paying him what he's worth right now. I'd like to see him start on Sunday. I think that, was it a game a couple of years ago we played against Man United where this was when he was still in his kind of baby giraffe phase, but he was a real handful and he caused them all sorts of problems, just in terms of he messes centre-backs about a bit more than Raul. Raul's cuter in his play, but United play three at the back. They play, physical defenders, particularly I think De Ligt was very sort of aggressive today up against Gyökeres, and I think we're going to need to put the same kind of player up against their back three in order to get some positivity kind of going forward. So I'd like to see him get a start, and I think as well it might just be a bit of a like trying to think of a boost to his confidence, in the sense of we value you. You are going to get game time here. You're not just going to be 20 minutes off the bench here, 15 minutes there. You will get your share of starts. And, sometimes, if a player's in form, I know it's very early in the season, but he's the one that's got the goal for us. So he'll be chomping at the bit and ready to go, I'd imagine. So why not give him the opportunity to start?
Yeah, great points. Completely agree with them. Next one from Barton is another one that we sort of touched on a little bit, but worth sort of discussing in further depth. Should we start ESR on the left? If yes, do we drop Wilson and move Iwobi to the right, or drop Iwobi?
It's a big call to drop Iwobi, isn't it? Given his goals and assist return last season. And actually, he didn't have his best game. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He was kind of quiet yesterday, but he still had that little moment with that chip into the box in the first half for Wilson. And that's just what Iwobi's all about. He always, even when he's playing badly, seems to put in a fantastic ball into the box that we should score from. I and I think Marco really values Iwobi, and I think he'll always find a place for him. I think ESR's only been filling in on the left because we haven't got cover. I think Silva sees him as a 10. I think there's more chance of King playing the 8 and ESR playing the 10 than there is of any other movement. And I'm just trying to look at what Marco does with Iwobi, and I know he has played him at centre midfield. I remember Brighton sticks to mind at home last year, but it's rare. He tends to prefer him out wide. He likes him on the left. I'm not expecting any kind of, lots of big changes from this week, even though the performance wasn't fantastic. I just think Silva will keep him there until we've got more cover to challenge him. But, it's a good question.
I think on that as well, Dave, we're playing a team that plays wing backs and Mbeumo plays off that right side. ESR can't really be trusted to track a wing back or a full back as well as Iwobi, and Iwobi and Bassi seem to have a bit more of a relationship. So I think from a defensive perspective, I wouldn't be changing that. I think that would cause us problems unnecessarily. I know Wilson was a bit quiet as well yesterday, but he's had a good pre-season. So I think after one game where it wasn't a disaster, we didn't lose, I'd persevere with what the preferred team is at the moment. So I don't, to be honest, I could see it being, maybe one change as we talked about up front. Other than that, I can't see us making too many drastic changes for Sunday.
Yeah, makes sense. The next one, I'll have a punt at this one as well because it's quite a fun one. By SCS. What do we need to do, transfers, tactics, etc., to start making more use of our right side in attack? I thought it was lacking again yesterday. One, completely agree with this point. Two, would love for us to have multiple threats. I've banged on about this, I feel, enough times. We have a really good left-sided attack. Why don't we make it unpredictable and have a really good right-sided attack? Or sometimes go through the middle, do a Liam Delap or a McAllister and just take a punt from outside the box, right? So, yeah, we need to mix it up. My view, overly simplistically perhaps, is we need a right-sided Robbo. We need basically a carbon copy of him, someone that's pacey and can get back and defend, because I think the first priority of a defender is to defend. But if he has the pace and he can get crosses in and he can complete triangles, then that's the key component. And I was actually pretty excited. I know the guy was really expensive and the name escapes me now, but there was, I believe, an Italian young right back that was quite attacking that we were looking at when we weren't sure if Tete was going to be with us. And he kind of felt like a Robinson-esque player. So maybe that would have been a piece that we could have used to create the triangles on the right-hand side. But I've blabbered on enough. So back to you guys. How do we make our right side better in attack?
Well, I just wanted to jump in. It was Bellanova we were linked with before we signed Tete up to a new deal. And yes, he is a right wing back, really. So that would have been quite interesting if we bought him. I slightly different view, and that's partly because I'm very biased towards Kenny Tete. But I just think that in the case of Wilson and Adama, they both have strengths. They both have moments in seasons, but I don't think both are elite players. And that's why they're shuffled. And I also think, perhaps we are looking at that, maybe not as a priority. It looks like we need to get someone in on the left-hand side as a priority. So let's get the Kevin deal wrapped up. But I wouldn't be surprised to see another winger come in to compete with those two. Just because, as I said, I don't think they're that elite level. Don't think there's anything strategically we're going to do until we've got the personnel to do it. I think in the meantime, Marco will stick with using the left because he knows Robinson's a huge part of our attack. And if you think Robinson and Iwobi played left most of last season and they got, between them, I think they got 16 assists. That's brilliant for two players. So, we'd like to vary it a bit more, but I just don't think we've got the personnel at the moment. Mike?
Yeah, so I think the fundamental part of it is actually the personnel that make up the three central players in midfield. Kenny, Smith Rowe, King all gravitate towards the left. The ones that play on the right are Lukic or Pereira. We'd often see moves break down on that side when it's Pereira because he's too careless in possession. And Lukic doesn't quite have the creativity when he's often shuffled out to that side. So I think I know we talked quite a lot about getting a number 8 in, it would be somebody to play off that right side of the central three who could maybe offer a bit more creativity, which for me, I think would open up more avenues of attack in that particular area of the field. If we bring in Kevin and Iwobi switches to the right side, that might also give us more of options as well. Because the great thing about Iwobi is he's flexible and he's a goal threat from anywhere. So that might potentially be, something that could help us get a bit more balance to our attacks. But it's not looking like we're going to do that particular bit of business in terms of a sort of a right-sided number 8 kind of player. So I think we'll still see the majority of our attacks coming down that left side just because of the personnel that we've got that occupy those positions.
Yeah, great points. Last one from Spanish FFC Ultras. Touched on it a little bit as well, but should we play Bassi at centre back or left back whilst Jedi is out? And another fun one, why does everyone go on about Dubai? Gentlemen?
I can't answer about Dubai. I've got no ideas about Dubai, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I've never been to Dubai either. Have you been, Mark?
Okay. I'll do Dubai and you guys do the football stuff. So that seems to make most sense. Dubai is like Disneyland for rich people. I've been there for work twice. For me, it's great for 3 days, and then I'm happy to come back and have my pint and my pouring rain and my lovely food here. So that's not a dig. We have a good food scene in London, but it's not for me. It's for some people. It's not for me. But great hotels and lots of sun. So if that's for you, and no taxes, so go enjoy Dubai. Now the football question is: Bassi at centre back or left back while Jedi is out?
We talked about this, didn't we? And I think it depends on who we're playing. Mike made a good point. Next week, we've got Mbueno up against us. Do we really want to bring in a right-footed left back to challenge Mbueno? And also, we saw last season, albeit that Castagna was carrying a knock that we found out retrospectively, he did get skinned by some tricky, quick wingers a few times at the back end of last season. And I think it could be bringing him in cold turkey for this one could be an issue. I think I'd stick to what we had in this game just for some continuity, work on it until Jedi's back would be my view.
I'd stick with the next league game. The League Cup game might give us a bit more opportunity to experiment with things like that because, as I said, we have seen Castagna at left back for us once. He's played there quite frequently for Belgium, so I don't think it would be like real square peg in a round hole. But Saturday worked fine. On the Dubai point, Mark, I will probably end up there at some point when Fulham play in the Club World Cup 2056 or whatever it is. So there you go. I'm not ruling it out.
Very good. Make sure to bring suntan lotion.
I wear suntan lotion like now. I'm getting burnt from the light in my room.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Mike is the palest person.
I'll need like a big sombrero or something like that for when I'm out.
He gets moonburn. You know,
Yeah.
so you wouldn't, don't worry about him with that. He's always sorted with that. Okay, well, yeah, that was fun. It was good to talk about it. It was just a great moment when Rodrigo got the winner, got the equaliser. I keep saying the winner. It felt like a winner. Got the equaliser yesterday, and it really cheered everyone up. I know Mark
talking of the late equaliser, can I use this platform to make a plea to any Fulham fans who leave early? Stop leaving early. How many more late goals does this team need to score before you just stay until the end? Please. I saw a few of you sneaking out. You know who you are.
That's a great point from Mike. I don't know about you guys, but I felt something would happen. And why I felt something would happen is I know if it were the other way around, we would screw it up. If like Brentford had a 97th minute corner against us, I know it's going in.
It felt like the opposite of the West Ham game last year at home early in the season. Like nothing happened in the game and then they scored from a terrible chance. So, yeah, you're absolutely right, Mark.
Awesome stuff.
I'm glad you brought up Brentford because they look shocking today and got to be one of the favourites for relegation. Yes, come on. So yeah, celebrated that nearly as much as Muniz's equaliser. Not quite, but yeah, it did make me chuckle. Okay, well, thanks for everyone for joining us today live, and thanks to Mark and Mike for their input today. Really enjoyed talking about it, and we'll be back later this week on either Wednesday or Thursday. We haven't decided yet, but we'll be back on one of those days to do the After Dark show ahead of the Man United home game on Sunday. So thanks again, and all that's left to say is
Come
You
white.
white.